My cabin has always been my escape from the chaos of the world. Tucked deep in the woods, right on the riverbank, it's where I breathe easiest. My grandfather built it with his own hands decades ago. Rough-hewn logs, a stone fireplace, the kind of place that smells like pine in history. But what really makes the place special is the bridge. The only way to get to my cabin is by crossing an old iron bridge that spans the river. It's not just some random public crossing. My grandfather bought the rights to it back in the 60s when the county tried to scrap it. People thought he was crazy for buying a rusty piece of steel nobody wanted, but he restored it, reinforced it, and ever since it's been in our family name. That bridge doesn't just connect the two banks. It's the gate to my sanctuary. Owning the only access point to my land has always felt like a quiet kind of power. Nobody could reach me unless I allowed it. And until recently, nobody dared test me on that. But that all changed when the HOA moved in. A few years ago, a developer carved up land downstream and built one of those cookie-cutter subdivisions. Beige houses with fake shutters, postage stamp lawns, the works. And where there's a subdivision, there's an HOA. The self-declared queen of that HOA was Linda, but everyone called her Karen because, well, she was the definition of one. Platinum blonde bob, oversized sunglasses, voice that could rattle, windows, and a personality like vinegar on an open wound. Karen didn't just run the HOA, she lived for it. She treated it like her personal kingdom. And the second she found out about my cabin, she made it her mission to control it. First, she tried to buy me out. She sent a letter offering me what she called a generous sum to sell the cabin so they could turn it into a community clubhouse. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. Then came the fake violations, envelopes stuffed with fines for excessive porch lighting and unapproved fencing. I wasn't even part of their HOA. They had no authority over me. But that didn't stop her from trying. And finally, she escalated to something I couldn't ignore. One Friday evening, I packed up my truck with supplies and headed for the cabin. The sky was glowing orange, the river glistening as I turned down the familiar road. But when I pulled up to my bridge, I hit the brakes so hard my tires squealed. The bridge was blocked. Massive orange barricades stretched across the entrance. A thick chain ran through them, secured with a shiny new padlock, and taped to the front was a sign that nearly made my jaw drop. Access closed. HOA private road. I sat there in stunned silence, my headlights washing over the barricade. My bridge, my family's bridge, and this woman had actually tried to claim it as her own. I stepped out, ripped the sign down, and yanked at the chain. Solid. She had gone all out. My blood boiled hotter than the July sun. This wasn't a mistake. This was war. And the craziest part? Karen had no idea she had just picked a fight she couldn't win, because while she thought blocking my cabin made her queen of the river, she didn't realize one thing: I owned the only bridge in. The next morning, I drove straight into the HOA subdivision. I wasn't in the mood for polite conversation. I wanted answers. Karen's house wasn't hard to spot. Perfectly trimmed hedges, shutters painted HOA-approved beige, and a wreath on the door that screamed, "I'm in charge here." I parked my truck right in front of her driveway, stepped out and knocked. It didn't take long. The door swung open, and there she was. Platinum blonde bob, sunglasses perched on her head even though it was 9 a.m., and a scowl etched so deep it looked permanent. "Can I help you?" she snapped, as if I was the one intruding on her property. "Yeah," I said, keeping my voice steady. "You can explain why there's a barricade across my bridge." She crossed her arms, tilting her head in that smug way people do when they think they have the upper hand. "That bridge is community property now. We closed it for safety reasons." I laughed, loudly. "Community property? Lady, that bridge has been in my family for decades. I've got the deed, the tax records, everything. You don't own a single bolt on it." Karen didn't even blink. "We've decided it falls under the HOA's jurisdiction. If you'd like access, you'll need to submit a request in writing, along with a maintenance fee." I stared at her, stunned at the audacity. "A fee? To use my own bridge? You're out of your mind." She smirked. "Rules are rules. You're welcome to join the HOA if you want voting rights." That was it. The fuse was lit. I leaned in, lowered my voice so only she could hear. Listen carefully. That bridge isn't yours. It's mine. And the only thing you're doing by blocking it is setting yourself up for a lawsuit you can't afford. Karen chuckled like I'd just told a bad joke. We'll see about that. Then she shut the door in my face. I stood there for a moment, fists clenched, pulse pounding in my ears. I'd dealt with stubborn people before, but this woman was on another level. Driving back, I knew one thing. If she wanted a war, she was going to get one. But I wasn't. About to fight it her way. No, Karen lived on rules and paperwork. I had something stronger, leverage. Because here's the thing about owning the only bridge into an area. Everyone uses it. That weekend, I parked my truck right across the entrance, blocking it completely. Then I put up my own sign, private property, trespassers will be prosecuted. It didn't take long before the chaos started. By noon, cars were lining up on the other side of the river. HOA families honking, waving their arms, shouting at me to move. Karen stormed up, sunglasses on, barking orders like she was leading an army. "This is illegal," she screamed from across the barricade. "You can't block access to our homes." I leaned against my truck, arms crossed, enjoying the show. "Funny, that's exactly what you did to me last night." "You don't understand," she fumed. "You're disrupting residents' lives. People need to get to work, to school. And I needed to get to my cabin," I cut in. "Didn't seem to bother you then." The crowd murmured, and I could see the cracks forming. Not everyone looked thrilled to be backing her up. Some neighbors shot her dirty looks. A few even whispered to each other, probably realizing they were caught in the middle of a fight they hadn't signed up for. Finally, one man spoke up. "Wait, you own the bridge?" "Sure do," I said, pulling the deed from my pocket and waving it. "Been in my family for 50 years. Paid every tax bill on it. I've got every legal right to block this bridge if I want to." Karen's face turned red as the murmurs grew louder. She snapped at the man. "Don't listen to him. He's bluffing." The HOA doesn't own squat," I interrupted, "and if you think you can keep pushing me, go ahead. But I promise you, the county judge is going to laugh you out of the courtroom." The neighbors looked at each other nervously. They weren't dumb. They could see the truth in black and white. Karen had overplayed her hand. Still, she wasn't. About to back down. "This isn't over," she hissed, pointing a perfectly manicured finger at me. "You'll regret this." But I didn't regret a thing. I watched as the crowd dispersed, people trudging back to their homes. Karen stomped away like a queen retreating from battle. And me? I stood there on my bridge, the evening sun glowing. Behind me, knowing one thing for certain, I had just turned the tables. You said. By Monday morning, I had already set up a routine, truck parked across the bridge, coffee in hand, waiting to see what kind of circus Karen would bring me today. And right on schedule, she didn't disappoint. I heard the sirens before I saw them. 2 squad cars rolled up on the far side of the river, lights flashing. Behind them, Karen standing with her arms crossed, smug as a cat who'd caught a bird. Finally, I thought. Showtime. The officers got out, one tall and serious looking, the other younger, and trying not to laugh at the absurdity of the situation. "You the property owner?" the tall one asked, motioning toward the bridge. "Sure am," I said, handing him a copy of the deed. "My grandfather bought it. Been in the family ever since. Taxes are paid up." He skimmed the paperwork, nodded, then glanced back at Karen. She was already marching over, finger raised. "Officer, don't listen to him. This bridge is the only access to our subdivision. He's blocking public right-of-way." The tall cop raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, according to this deed, it's private property. His property." Karen's face twisted. "That can't be." "Right! The HOA board voted—" "Ma'am," the younger cop interrupted, trying to keep a straight face. "An HOA doesn't override a legal deed." The neighbors who had gathered behind her started whispering. Some smirked. Others looked embarrassed. I could tell the tide was turning. Karen stomped her foot like a child. "So you're just going to let him block us in? We have rights." The tall cop shrugged. "Yes, ma'am, you do. And he has the right to control access to his property. If you don't like it, you'll have to take it up in civil court." The sai. Color drained from her face. For once, she was speechless. The cops handed back my paperwork, gave me a nod, and drove off. Karen was left standing there, fuming, her army of neighbors suddenly not so loyal. But if I thought that was the end of it, I was dead wrong. The very next week, I got a letter in the mail, certified, from a law office. Karen had actually convinced the HOA to hire an attorney and sue me for restricting community access. I'll admit that one made me laugh out loud. I showed up to court in jeans and boots. Karen arrived in a tailored blazer carrying a stack of binders like she was about to argue the Supreme Court. Her lawyer looked tired before it even started. The judge flipped through my paperwork, asked a few questions, then leaned back in his chair. "Ms. Linda, the deed is clear. The bridge is his property. You have no authority over it." Karen shot to her feet. "But, Your Honor, people live here. They need access." "Then perhaps you should have negotiated an easement before building homes that rely on private land," the judge said flatly. "Case dismissed." The gavel came down, and just like that, it was over. Or so I thought. Because if Karen couldn't win with cops or courts, she was going to try something else. The next weekend, I drove out to the bridge and found something new. Spray-painted graffiti across the guardrails. Words like selfish and greedy in bright red paint. Someone had even tried to cut the chain with bolt cutters. I didn't need to guess who was behind it. I called the sheriff, filed a vandalism report, and then did something Karen didn't expect. I installed cameras. Big, obvious motion sensor. Floodlights, too. Now, every time someone got near the bridge, they lit up like a stage. 2 nights later, guess who got caught on camera? Karen herself. There she was, 2 a.m., standing at the barricade with a flashlight, tugging on the lock like she could magic it open. When the lights snapped on, she dropped the chain and ran like a kid caught stealing candy. I sent the footage, straight to the sheriff. Within days, she got slapped with a warning for trespassing. The best part? The HOA board finally started turning on her. I overheard 2 of them one evening at the gas station, arguing about how much money they'd wasted on her nonsense lawsuits. "She promised us she'd handle it," one of them grumbled. "All she's done is embarrass us." And me? I just sat back and enjoyed the show. Because while Karen was busy digging herself into a deeper hole, I was already planning my final move. Owning the bridge wasn't just about keeping her out. It was about reminding her and everyone else that power doesn't come from clipboards, fines, or HOA meetings. It comes from knowing exactly what you own and never letting anyone take it. By now, Karen's reputation in the neighborhood had taken a serious beating. Word travels fast in small communities, and every stunt she pulled only made her look worse. The night she was caught on my cameras sneaking around the bridge was the final straw for a lot of people. Some neighbors who used to nod politely at her began avoiding her altogether. Others laughed behind her back. Even her so-called allies on the HOA board started keeping their distance. But Karen? She wasn't the type to give up. If anything, the more cornered she became, the wilder her plans got. One morning, as I was sipping my coffee on the porch, I saw her marching up the road with a clipboard. A small group of homeowners followed reluctantly behind her, looking like kids forced to attend detention. She stopped right at the edge of the bridge, planted her feet, and shouted across the water, "You can't keep doing this! We demand access!" Her voice cracked a little at the end. I leaned on the railing, calm as ever. "Karen, demand all you want. This bridge isn't yours, and if you don't like it, maybe you should have thought twice before trying to block me from my own cabin." She huffed, flipped a page on her clipboard, and held it up like a victory flag. "We've voted to fine you every day you block us. By the authority of this HOA," I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. "Authority? Karen, I'm not part of your HOA. You've got as much authority over me as you do over the moon." The group behind her shuffled awkwardly. One man finally spoke up. Karen, maybe we should just let this go. He's within his rights. We're only making things worse. Karen spun on him like a rattlesnake. Whose side are you on? But it was too late. The crowd was slipping away one by one. Her army had dwindled down to nothing, and all she had left was her voice, shrill and desperate, echoing across the water. That's when I knew I'd already won. Still, I wasn't done. The following week, I hosted a little gathering at my cabin. Nothing fancy, just burgers, beers, and an open invitation to anyone in the subdivision who wanted to hear my side of the story. I figured if Karen could spin her narrative, so could I. To my surprise, half the neighborhood showed up. We ate, laughed, swapped stories about Karen's antics. Turns out I wasn't the first one she'd tried to bully. She had written people up for lawn decorations, fought a neighbor over paint color, even tried to ban backyard barbecues because the smoke was disruptive. By the end of the night, people were practically lining up to shake my hand. Finally, someone stood up to her, one man said. We've been waiting for this for years. And just like that, Karen lost the one thing she cared about most: control. She stopped coming to meetings, stopped patrolling the streets with her clipboard. Her white SUV still sat in the driveway, but the curtains were drawn tight like the whole house had gone into hiding. I heard whispers that the HOA board was holding a vote of no confidence, that they were tired of footing the bill for her personal vendettas, that they were looking for someone else, anyone else, to lead. And then came the final cherry on top. A few months later, I got a letter from the county. The HOA had filed for an easement request, basically begging the government to force me to open the bridge. But after reviewing the case, the county denied it. Too costly, too impractical, and most importantly, unnecessary. The bridge was mine. End of story. Karen must have been furious when she read that decision. As for me, I kept the barricade. Not because I wanted to punish anyone, but because it reminded people of the truth. Don't mess with what isn't yours. Eventually, some of the nicer neighbors came and asked politely if I'd consider giving them access for emergencies. I agreed, under strict conditions. They signed agreements, acknowledged my ownership, and promised no more harassment. And for once, there was peace. Karen, though? She never spoke to me again. I'd see her sometimes, driving past with her, jaw tight and her eyes straight ahead, pretending I didn't exist. But I didn't need her words to know what she was thinking. She hated me. She hated losing. But most of all, she hated that everyone finally saw through her act, and in the end, that was the sweetest revenge of all. Because sometimes you don't need to raise your voice, or break the law, or even fight back the way they expect. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply standing your ground, Ranger, and letting the truth do the rest. Outro for YouTube. And that's how HOA Karen tried to block my access, only to discover I owned the only bridge in and out of the neighborhood. She threw everything she had at me, cops, courts, vandalism, even her HOA army, and still lost. If you enjoyed this story of sweet, poetic justice, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next wild HOA showdown. And remember, always know what you own, because one day it might just save you from a Karen.